Out of Oz, The Wicked Years 4 by Gregory Maguire. Our tale begins not in the magical land of Oz, but in Kansas, with Dorothy Gale. After her infamous journey to Oz, she's returned home, forever changed. Her stories of witches, flying monkeys, and emerald cities are met with skepticism and concern. Dorothy's sanity is questioned by those around her. They can't fathom the reality of her experiences, dismissing them as mere fantasies. In an attempt to ground her in the real world, Aunt Em and Uncle Henry take her on a trip to San Francisco. They hope that the marvels of this bustling city will overshadow her Ozian memories. San Francisco is indeed a marvel, a world away from the Kansas plains. Cable cars scale impossible hills, and the vast ocean stretches beyond the horizon. Dorothy is fascinated, but even these wonders cannot fully eclipse the vivid Technicolor world of Oz that resides in her heart. Dorothy is torn between two realities. She understands her aunt and uncle's concern and their desire for her to lead a normal life. But Oz is a part of her, a place she can't simply erase from her memory. As they explore Chinatown, Dorothy sees reflections of Oz in the vibrant foreign culture. But she is careful not to voice these observations, knowing they will only further alarm her guardians. During a dinner of strange and spicy food, their waiter brings them fortune cookies. Uncle Henry reads his aloud. It's a quote from a poem, urging the embrace of home, no matter how humble. Dorothy reads hers. It speaks of a mind being a kingdom, rich with present joys that surpass any earthly bliss. The irony is not lost on them. A wise old Chinese woman gives Dorothy a cricket in a tiny bamboo cage meant to bring luck. However, Dorothy, remembering the locusts of Kansas and believing that no creature should be caged, releases the cricket when she and Uncle Henry ascend to the hotel's rooftop. They marvel at the city lights, a glittering landscape that rivals even the Emerald City in its brilliance. Yet even here, Oz lingers in Dorothy's thoughts. She sees parallels, makes comparisons. She can't escape the pull of that other world. As they descend in the hotel's elevator, an earthquake strikes. The year is 1906, and San Francisco is about to be shaken to its core. It's a moment of chaos and terror. The timing is uncanny, almost as if Dorothy's presence has triggered this disaster, much like her arrival in Oz coincided with the death of a witch. Is Dorothy a harbinger of chaos, or is this merely a cruel coincidence? The scene then shifts, dramatically. We are transported to Munchkinland in Oz, where Glinda, once the good witch of the South and now a somewhat reclusive figure, resides in Mockbeggar Hall. She's being forced to entertain an unwelcome guest, General Cherrystone, a high-ranking officer in the army of the Emerald City. Their conversation is a delicate dance of power and defiance. Glinda, as always, is a picture of elegance and grace, even under duress. She parries Cherrystone's veiled threats with wit and charm, maintaining an air of control even as her world is being upended. Cherrystone, a man hardened by war and ambition, is there to requisition Mockbeggar Hall for the Emerald City's military campaign. Munchkinland, once a part of Oz, has seceded, and the Emerald City, under the rule of the Emperor Apostle Shell, is determined to reclaim it. The crux of the conflict lies in control over Restwater, the largest lake in Oz and a vital resource. Glinda's refusal to evacuate Mockbeggar Hall is seen as an act of defiance, even treason. She argues that her presence in Munchkinland predates the secession and that her loyalty lies with Oz, not with any particular regime. But her words ring hollow in the face of Cherrystone's might. He informs her that she is under house arrest and her staff will be dismissed. Glinda tries to negotiate to maintain some semblance of control over her life and household. She insists on keeping a skeletal crew, arguing for the necessity of a chef, a butler, a lady-in-waiting. Cherrystone, however, is firm. He sees through her attempts to maintain her usual lifestyle, recognizing them as a subtle form of resistance. Their conversation is a microcosm of the larger conflict, a battle of wills between individual autonomy and the demands of a state at war. The once bustling halls of Mockbeggar are now filled with the sounds of soldiers and the unsettling presence of military might. Glinda, confined to her private apartments, feels the walls closing in. The gardens she so lovingly tended are trampled by horses, the once peaceful lake now a strategic asset in a brutal war. Amidst this turmoil, Glinda retains a small, loyal staff. There's Miss Mirth, her aging and somewhat embittered lady-in-waiting, Puggles, the stout-hearted butler, Chef, a culinary genius whose name no one can pronounce, and a young, somewhat slow-witted girl named Rain, who serves as a broom girl. This unlikely group becomes Glinda's last bastion of normalcy, a small island of civility in a sea of chaos. Rain is perhaps 8 years old and an orphan. She has no last name, and no one, not even Rain, seems to know much about her origins. She's lived at Mockbeggar Hall for most of her short life, helping with chores, sweeping, and generally being underfoot. Glinda has taken her in out of a sense of charity, but she's more of a fixture than a beloved member of the household. Rain is quiet, observant, and, as we soon learn, far more significant than anyone realizes. Glinda, ever resourceful, attempts to use her limited freedom to gather intelligence. She's particularly interested in the construction going on in the barns, suspecting that Cherrystone is planning something significant. She tries to enlist Rain's help, hoping the girl's small size and appat niru appearance will allow her to move about unnoticed. Rain, however, proves to be more than just a broom girl. She has a natural curiosity and a knack for observation. She discovers that Cherrystone's men are building boats, large, sturdy vessels designed not for leisurely lake outings but for war. These boats, she realizes, are intended to launch a direct assault on Howgard's Keep, the fortress at the eastern end of Restwater. Meanwhile, Cherrystone continues to tighten his grip on Mockbeggar Hall. He invites Glinda to dine with him, a gesture that is both an act of courtesy and a display of power. Their dinner conversation is a verbal duel, a clash of ideologies and wills. Glinda, ever the diplomat, tries to understand Cherrystone's motives, to find some common ground. But Cherrystone, hardened by years of military service, is more interested in strategy and conquest. During this tense dinner, Rain is given a seemingly simple task, to fetch a newspaper from Glinda's library. But this task becomes a turning point. Rain, who has been learning to read from Cherrystone, discovers her own hidden talent. She can not only read the words on the page, but also perceive the underlying meaning, the hidden intentions. She sees beyond the surface, into the heart of things. As the days pass, the situation at Mockbeggar Hall grows increasingly tense. Cherrystone dismisses most of Glinda's staff, leaving her with only a handful of loyal retainers. The soldiers, restless and bored, begin to cause more and more trouble. They burn fields, harass the locals, and generally make a nuisance of themselves. In an attempt to distract the soldiers and perhaps gain some intelligence, Glinda arranges for a traveling entertainment troupe to perform at Mockbeggar. The troupe, known as the Clock of the Time Dragon, is a bizarre and fascinating spectacle. A giant clockwork contraption, part puppet show, part social commentary, it's a reflection of Oz's turbulent times. The clock's performance is a thinly veiled critique of the war and the Emerald City's aggression. It features dancing girls, soldiers, and a menacing dragon, all manipulated by intricate clockwork mechanisms. The show is both entertaining and unsettling, a reminder of the chaos and destruction that war brings. After the performance, the leader of the troupe, a dwarf named Mr. Boss, reveals to Glinda that he has something for her, something she had entrusted to him years ago. It's the Grimmerie, Elphaba's ancient and powerful book of spells. Glinda, however, is reluctant to take it back. She knows the danger it represents, the power it holds. The Grimmerie is more than just a book. It's a symbol of resistance, a source of magic that the Emerald City desperately wants to control. Its pages contain spells and incantations capable of altering the very fabric of reality. It's a weapon, and in the wrong hands, it could be used to unleash unimaginable destruction. Glinda's refusal to take the Grimmerie sets in motion a chain of events that will have far-reaching consequences. The book, now in the hands of Mr. Boss and his troupe, becomes a focal point of the conflict, a prize sought by both sides. Meanwhile, back at Mockbeggar Hall, things go from bad to worse. Cherrystone, angered by the clock's performance and suspecting Glinda of treachery, has Chef arrested and, it is implied, drowned. The remaining staff are confined to even smaller quarters, their movements restricted. In the midst of this turmoil, Rain continues her reading lessons with Cherrystone. She's learning quickly, her mind awakening to the power of words, but she's also becoming increasingly aware of the danger she's in. She knows that the Grimmerie is more than just a book. It's a key to a power she doesn't fully understand. One day, while exploring the grounds, Rain discovers what Cherrystone's men have been building in the barns. They're not just boats, they're warships designed to carry dragons. The realization is chilling. Cherrystone is planning to use dragons, creatures of immense power and destructive potential, to attack Howgard's keep. Rain, despite her youth, understands the implications. This isn't just a war for territory or resources. It's a war that could change the very nature of Oz. The use of dragons, creatures associated with ancient magic and primal forces, is a dangerous escalation. She tries to warn Glinda, but Glinda is preoccupied with her own struggles. The once powerful sorceress is now a prisoner in her own home, her powers curtailed, her influence diminished. She's a symbol of a bygone era, a time when magic was more prevalent, less controlled. In a desperate attempt to stop the impending attack, Rain decides to take matters into her own hands. She uses her newfound ability to read the Grimmerie, seeking a spell that can counter the dragons. But the book is ancient and powerful, and its magic is not easily controlled. Rain finds a spell to call winter upon water, and with Glinda's help, she casts it. The spell is intended to freeze Restwater, trapping Cherrystone's fleet and giving the Munchkinlanders a chance to regroup. But something goes wrong. The spell works, but it also awakens something else, something ancient and powerful. The arrival of the Clock of the Time Dragon Troop, led by the enigmatic dwarf Mr. Boss, adds another layer of complexity to the narrative. This traveling show, with its bizarre contraption that's part mechanical, part magical, is more than just entertainment. It's a reflection of Oz's fractured state, a symbol of a world out of joint. The lion, brr, recognizes the troop's leader, for he, along with the Grimmerie, had once been part of this very show. The Clock of the Time Dragon, it turns out, was not just a stage for performances, but also a hiding place for the dangerous Book of Spells. Its purpose was to keep the Grimmerie out of the wrong hands, to prevent its power from being used for nefarious purposes. The performance at Mockbeggar Hall, with its puppet soldiers and dancing girls, is a thinly veiled critique of the war. It's a satire, a commentary on the absurdity of the conflict and the suffering it has caused. The clock, in its own way, is trying to show the truth, to reveal the reality behind the propaganda and the political posturing. But the show also has another purpose. It's a distraction, a diversion. While the soldiers are entertained, while Glinda is focused on the performance, Mr. Boss is able to retrieve the Grimmerie. He takes the book from its hiding place, intending to keep it safe, to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. The performance of the Clock of the Time Dragon also reveals something about the nature of magic in Oz. It's not just about spells and enchantments, it's about perception, about how people see the world. The clock, with its moving parts and its shifting scenes, is a metaphor for the way reality can be manipulated, how truth can be distorted. The arrival of the Grimmerie at Mockbeggar Hall, however, is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new chapter. The book's power is too great to be ignored, too dangerous to be left unused. It's a temptation, a lure that draws people in, promising them power and control. Glinda, confined to her quarters, struggles with the knowledge that the Grimmerie is within reach. She knows its power, she knows its danger, but she also knows that it might be the only way to save her home, to stop the war. She's torn between her desire for peace and her fear of the book's destructive potential. Rain, meanwhile, is undergoing her own transformation. She's no longer just a passive observer, a child caught up in events beyond her control. She's becoming a player, a participant. She's learning to read, to understand the world around her, to see beyond the surface. And she's beginning to realize that she has a power of her own, a power that comes not from magic, but from her own unique perspective, her ability to see the truth that others miss. The confrontation at the chancel of the Ladyfish, where Rain and her companions had sought refuge, is a pivotal moment. It's here that Rain's power is revealed, her ability to use the Grimmerie, to call forth magic that can alter the course of events. But it's also here that she learns the limits of her power. She can't control everything. She can't always protect those she loves. The arrival of Dorothy, too, is a turning point. She's a wild card, an unpredictable element in an already chaotic situation. She's a reminder of a different time, a different Oz, an Oz that may no longer exist. But she's also a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always the possibility of change, of redemption. Dorothy's trial is a farce, a mockery of justice. But it's also a reflection of the state of Oz, a nation divided, a people at war with themselves. The trial is a stage on which the conflicts of Oz are played out, a battleground for competing ideologies and power struggles. The arrival of the dragons, trained by Trism and unleashed by Mombe, is the culmination of all the tension, all the conflict that has been building throughout the story. It's a moment of chaos and destruction, a moment when the fate of Oz hangs in the balance. Reign's decision to confront the Emperor, to demand the release of her father, is a brave and desperate act. She's stepping into the heart of the storm, risking everything to save the one she loves. But she's also stepping into a larger conflict, a battle for the soul of Oz. The revelation that Tip is, in fact, Ozma, the long-lost ruler of Oz, is a shock, a twist that changes everything. It's a moment of transformation, of metamorphosis, as Tip sheds his disguise and embraces his true identity. But it's also a moment of uncertainty. What does it mean to be Ozma? What does it mean to rule? The decision to install the Cowardly Lion as throne minister is a surprising one, but it's also a logical one. Burr, for all his flaws, has shown himself to be a leader, a protector. He's someone who understands the complexities of Oz, who has seen the best and the worst of its people. Reign's decision to leave, to set out on her own, is a bittersweet moment. She's grown up, she's found her own path, but she's also leaving behind the only family she's ever known. Her journey is a solitary one, a quest for self-discovery, but it's also a journey into the unknown, into a world that is both dangerous and full of possibilities. The ending of Out of Oz is not a neat resolution, but an open door. It's an invitation to imagine what might happen next, to dream of a future that is both uncertain and full of hope. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always the possibility of change, of growth, of redemption. And it's a testament to the power of stories, the power of words to shape our world, to give us hope, to help us find our way. If you enjoyed this book breakdown, please consider liking this video and subscribing to get notified when we post our next book.